If I was an Irishman, I would say top of the morning to you, but I'm just a humble Scot, so I'm awful glad you're with us. We have a great program. One of my dear friends is with me, Zach Drew, one of the greatest explainers, for the best of sake of a better word, of what is going on today in the world. I mean, this young man has got astonishing research power, and he brings us stuff that we would not normally hear, and most of the church is not aware of. We are in amazing times. Now listen to me, guys. This is blood and guts moments we're facing in this country. And the thing that worries me is most folk are asleep. Most people have no idea what's going on. I watch these, I don't know if you watch these interviews on the street stuff that goes on, and the kids can't even tell you, they'll show a picture of the president and they won't know who the president is, and they can't give the Pledge of Allegiance. This country has been dumbed down to a level of dangerous proportion. And Zach Drew is with me today on the program. I know you've seen Zach on other television programs, and he has his own show as well. We'll talk about during this program too. So I want you to stay tuned, and I would advise you, if you could, tell someone. Go and hit the share button right now. We are, by all intents, as we're looking at our numbers, how many folk we have on our social pages, we're over 50,000, and we've been checking, and it's actually getting out. They're alerting about 350,000 people, because I don't think they like some of the stuff that we speak about. And I'd rather do what I'm doing than compromise to them, because they're temporary, he's eternal. And what they think is going to last forever, I believe that God is going to send a revival in this country. He has to. If God doesn't send a revival to America, we are doomed. I'm telling you now. And we as an empire, the American age, it's only 270 years old or something like that. 250 years old. It's not old. And bigger empires have fallen because of the exact same things that's taking place in America today. We are repeating history. So if you could switch on your notifications so you know when Daily Faith's coming on the air. And boy, am I looking forward to this program today. We're going to have a great show. I'm really, really glad you could be with us. Welcome to Daily Faith. Hello, welcome to Daily Faith. My name is Philip Cameron, and I am sure glad you could join us for a wee while. Daily Faith is a program that God has caused us to put together to be an affirmation in your life. Faith comes by hearing by the Word of God. And we want to be here for you, to stand with you and believe with you for great things in your life. And sometimes in a storm, you need a coach. You need someone to be talking to you and affirming you. When you watch these boxing matches, they go back to the corner after 3 minutes, and there's a guy that's taking care of the cuts, and there's a guy that's giving water, and someone else is pouring ice water in his head or an ice bag. But the main guy there is the coach, and he's saying, you're dropping your left hand. He's coming across your left hand with your right. Keep your left hand up. But when he comes in, he's open for a right hook, and he's watching from the sidelines. So when that boxer goes back to the corner, he can receive instruction and encouragement. And that's what I want Daily Faith to be. We started this over a year ago because of the pandemic. Pastors were calling saying, what's going on? I don't know what to do. What's going to happen? And I wanted this to become a crossroads of ideas and pastors and ministers coming in. And God sent us the greatest and the most up-to-date, prolific guys in America today. And today our guest is one of these guys. So we are looking forward to being with him. Just an update from Moldova. We have a mission work for those who don't know us. We are an American organization with us. I'm Scottish, of course, if you wonder where my accent's from. But we have a passion for missions. We love missions. And 33 years ago, I went to Romania and found a wee boy in an orphanage and adopted him. And out of that came a third of a century of mission work that we've done. And we have saved and rescued and fed and supported and educated over the years hundreds, if not thousands of kids. And right now we have a place called Vatra Village, an amazing place made up of 6 homes where we intervene from a young person that's coming out at 16 to leave the orphanage, and they've nowhere to go, and traffickers come and offer them fake jobs. And we have a place called Vatra Village, and they come to us and we put them back in school. We tell them, if you're born, God has a plan, you're not a mistake. Whatever the teachers told you in the school, in the orphanage, that's a lie. God has you written on the palm of his hands. And what happens is, incredibly, these kids begin to believe what they hear. Let me tell you something. What you hear conditions who you are. It impacts your mind. What you listen to impacts your mind. And when we tell these kids, you can do anything you want, there's no limits to what you can do, they believe it. And we are seeing some crazy things. And it all starts with having a place to stay, a place of love, and the gospel. Watch how it starts.
You start by carving out a space to build safe places for them, to regain trust in themselves and in humanity. You start by giving them a place to belong, to call home. You start by pulling out the roots of fear, of abandonment and rejection. You start by letting them know how much they matter and how loved they are. You start by showing them what love is. You start by teaching them to release the burden. It is not theirs to carry. You start by teaching them to forgive the broken people who have wronged them and to forgive themselves. You start to give them the tools to better themselves and to change their future. You start by educating and empowering them. You start by speaking truth into their potential. You start by putting candles on their birthday cakes. This is the place where the orphan's hand starts. On the other side of fear, abuse, poverty, and human trafficking stands Vatra Village. Countless lives, one mission: to lift up the fallen.
Because of Vatra Village, I am safe.
I have food.
I have a bed.
School to go.
A family.
But most importantly, Vatra Village gave us God.
This is the miracle of Vatra Village. A miracle that wouldn't have been possible without your kind giving. Your care and love opened doors of hope and allowed us to rescue the perishing. You've helped the orphans' hands build these amazing homes, so please, continue to stand with us in prayer, faith, and action as we keep a light on for those that have lived in darkness for too long. You can change their life for $1 a day. Thank you for caring.
If you were at a bus stop where one of those girls was standing, and a trafficker was there trying to get her into the back of that car, the girl, once in his clutches, will make $300,000 a year. One girl makes $300,000 a year for the trafficker. If I were to be standing there with you and that girl is about to get in the back of that car, and as soon as she's there, she gets beaten and raped until they break her spirit and will, transported across countries, and then made to stand on street corners or lie in filthy places. If you've ever seen the movie Taken, the one point of that movie that was deadly accurate was a portable building with curtains and numbers above the curtains, and the men were standing and the girls were lying there. Every 15 minutes someone else would go into the room. And if I were to stand there with you and say, listen, we can save this girl for $1 a day, would you do it? Would you say, for goodness sake, Philip, get her out of that car? Well, that's what we've done. Everything we've done in Moldova has been done by people giving $1 a day. It's the most crazy thing. The buildings have been built by gifts, but the support, the thing that matters every day, has been folk just like you giving $1. $1 a day won't change your economic outlook. It will bless your life, because when you give to the poor, you lend to the Lord. It is the greatest investment you'll ever give, because He is God describes Himself as the Father of the fatherless. The Father of the fatherless. He's the Father of the widow, of the orphan. And if you will help me support these houses, I believe that God's favor will shine on your life. $1 a day, you can change your life for $1 a day. And so you can, for those that do, we have a book that we wrote on Andrew, how we adopted our son Andrew. It is a great book. It's a great read. It's light in the fact that you flow along with the story and you watch the miraculous hand of God unwind in us and for us as we go through the system, a communist system. We went into Romania and came out 3 weeks later with Andrew with us, which I've never heard anyone else do before. And this is the story. It's called Our Bummer Lamb. And a bummer lamb is a very special animal that is abandoned by its mom when it's born and will die unless a shepherd rescues it. Watch this short video and you'll understand more.
A lamb that has been rejected by its mother is called a bummer lamb. Once its mother abandons her lamb, it is forever. The lamb will die broken unless a shepherd rescues it. He takes the lamb into his home, feeds, cares, and redeems the broken animal. When returned to the flock, that bummer lamb never forgets the one who redeemed it. Standing abandoned in a Romanian orphanage, my wife Chrissy and I found a bummer lamb. His name was Andrei. This book is the story of how a family made room for a little forsaken bummer lamb. It is the story of us all. We stand redeemed by the care of the Good Shepherd.
I'd love to send you that book. I believe it would bless your heart. I really feel that the message of faith that's in that would really help you in the circumstance you're in. Because the same God that made a way for an orphan boy to get out of a communist country just after the revolution there in 3 weeks, the same God that delivered him can deliver you. So get that book. You can call me or write me today at the Orphan's Hands, P.O. Box 25, Clinton, Tennessee, 37716. P.O. Box 25, Clinton, Tennessee, 37716. And say, Philip, I will be a part of this miracle and give $1 a day. Right now, we're working on the final house as far as construction goes at Vatra Village. We've named it Betzer House after Dan Betzer, a great pastor, a missionary pastor, one of the greatest pastors I've ever met in 50 years of ministry in America. He retired this year, and to honor him, we called the house, our last house to finish, Betzer House. And it's completely finished. All the tiling, everything's done. It's finished. Flooring in, everything's done. We just need to furnish it. And there are 5 rooms in that home, and the average cost, because we buy the furniture here and ship it by container to Moldova, it's still cheaper to do that. And the quality of the furniture here is much better than there. And it costs about $6,500 for one room to sponsor. And I'd love to put your family's picture up in one of those rooms in that house and say, this by sacrifice to change your life. And you can have kids that you rescued by your kindness pray for you every night. So if you'd like to do that, it's P.O. Box 25, Clinton, Tennessee, 37716. Or you can call 833 Daily Faith. Or you can go to dailyfaith.tv and you can be a part of a miracle. I promise you, part of a miracle. We got a video this morning. They're having camp right now. Our kids, once orphans, become sons and daughters. Then they go out and they become missionaries. And right now is our camp season in Moldova. And we got this video this morning of these crazy kids that God's allowed us to rescue, going out and telling those that have never heard the gospel watch this video. Isn't that cool? And that happens every day all through the summertime. Our young folk that your $1 a day sponsors don't sit and just go to school. They're missionaries all during this pandemic in Moldova, this terrible season. If you think it's been bad in America, you should be in one of the poorest countries, or if the poorest country in Europe, with no vaccinations and no real medicine to address this thing. And one of our leaders, Nadia, said to me a few weeks ago, she says, Dad, she says, COVID won't kill people here, starvation will. You imagine a widow in a tiny village and there's no place to shop and you've got no money and there's no way to get, there's no buses because they've closed the buses because of the pandemic. And our kids were given special status by the government, an NGO, a non-government government organization, and we were deemed as an essential service. And our kids went out and kept these folks alive, kept families alive, and orphans becoming missionaries. You can be a part of this thing. I know that God's talking to your heart. I am absolutely thrilled to pieces today to have my friend with me, Zach Drew. I've known Zach for many, many years. He was a co-host at Jim Bakker's program for many years and moved on from there and has now his own program that we're going to talk about, where you can see it. And if ever there's a show you want to get involved with and listen to, I've never met anyone to do more thorough research as to the current happenings in America, not just prophetic, but where we are just now and how this is unfolding. You don't have to be a prophet to know what's happening in America. You'd be better being a historian than a prophet, because what you're seeing in America is history repeating itself. I am British. I was born just after the Second World War, 10 years after the Second World War. And I am watching what's happening to America today is a repeat of what happened in Germany and Europe before everything exploded. And so, Zach, I am so glad you could take the time. I know you're a busy man, but I'm glad you could be with me and help me out today and give us an update as to what's happening. Folk think that Joe Biden is some kind of, dunderhead doesn't know what he's doing. They are working to a very calculated plan. They know exactly what they're doing right now, don't they?
That's right. Absolutely. First off, thank you for having me on the program again.
Oh, you're welcome.
As you know, and your audience knows, I love being here with you on Daily Faith. Yes, there's absolutely a program. There is a. See, here's the thing: is even with Joe Biden, he looks and appears to be just some hollow, almost Mr. Magoo figure, and to some degree, maybe he is. But there is a puppeteer controlling every move and every word he makes, even if he can't quite deliver it correctly while reading his teleprompter. But the thing is this: there is absolutely a plan to diminish the global strength of America.
Tell us about it.
That is what's happening right in front of our eyes. It's also absolutely prophetic, because we understand, as many of us know already, I'm not saying anything that we don't know, there is only one country truly standing in the way of a global order, and that is America. Once America can fall, a new global order can rise out of those ashes. And those initiating these tactics are doing so on multiple fronts. It really is a collaborated effort through different groups, initiatives, programs, and they rally around certain things. This list could go on forever, but they rally around things like climate change. And we're going to be dealing with one particular article about Biden's new America the Beautiful initiative that revolves around climate change, because climate change you must get involved in,
Yes.
because it's an existential threat. And sure, you might have to give up the meat you eat, the cars you drive, the rural area
Yes.
you live in. We need everybody concentrated in cities. Sure, you might have to give up your land itself, but it's
Yeah.
all for the sake of the greater good of humanity. It's all a bunch of garbage. And I just don't even understand how so many people don't see right through this. That it's all based in falsehoods. But yes, they rally around climate change, manipulated
Sure.
social injustices.
And the
They've
thing is,
rallied around COVID-19.
and the problem is with climate change is, like we just had this flood in Germany a couple of days ago, or there's forest fires out west. So what it does is it gives them the ammunition to say, look, we told you, the sky's falling down. And if they can create a panic, then they can put in ridiculous rules and new laws and new restrictions that can take away the liberty of Americans. But we just got to do it because, you know, it's the world's coming to an end in is it 12 years? I forget what AOC tells us. It shortens. I remember when Vice President Gore said the same thing.
Al Gore?
And yeah, Al's done that, and it's way past the sell-by date. But well, with a new one, and this one really is going to happen this time. And Henny Penny and Chicken Licken are doing quite well up in D.C.
That's exactly right. And they go by many names, but they're all at the bottom, because a lot of us in the conservative movement, we throw out socialists, communists, globalists, but truly at the base of everything, they're all Marxists. That's what they are. That's the best word to describe them is truly Marxist. And these people, this group of people, they are filled with the Antichrist spirit. They're under the influence of their master. That needs to be said. He is absolutely working through them. And more often than not, I will say, honestly, that it's without the knowledge of the individuals themselves. Because when Jesus Christ is our Lord and Master, he works through us for his kingdom, for his benefit and for his glory. But if people are not of that fold, then they are working, whether they know it or not, for the enemy's kingdom. Absolutely. And the enemy knows his day to rule the earth as sovereign over every tribe, nation, and tongue is coming soon. He gets it. The enemy knows prophetic scripture better than probably we do. He's been anxiously awaiting this time for 6,000 years. Yeah. And his moves that we're seeing in the earth right now make that clear, make it evident. But I want to say this before I start out with this first article. The most important thing to take note of, and we can give all the glory to God because of this, is that these articles, these things that we're reading, it's all a testament that his holy word is absolutely true, absolutely infallible. It has stood the test of time, and our coming King Jesus will come soon, putting an eternal end to sin and reigning eternally as our King here on earth. So, can we get right into the Marxist land grab? There's an absolutely shocking article. I did a show on this recently, and I said it was called The Great Reset, Don't Sell the Farm. Truly, don't sell the farm. Biden-Harris administration outlines America the Beautiful initiative. This is an article by the Department of Interior.
Sounds so good.
Can you still see and hear me okay?
Yeah, it's up there. We're showing what you're talking about. The article actually up on the screen right now.
Terrific. Okay, so it says here, the Biden-Harris administration outlined a vision for how the United States can work collaboratively, they use these words so strategically, to conserve and restore the lands, waters, and wildlife that support and sustain the nation. Outline a locally led and voluntary people, it's locally led, okay? And voluntary nationwide conservation goal to conserve 30% of the U.S. lands and waters by 2030. 30% of the land in the U.S., they want it to be totally government owned by 2030, and they want 50% by 2050. Okay?
Wow.
That means if you look at a map of the United States of America, just cut it right down the middle and half of it would be owned by the federal government. 1 out of every 2 acres would be owned by the federal government.
Unbelievable.
Listen, I'm telling you right now, if the Lord tarries, I don't think, but who am I? I don't think he'll tarry another 100 years.
No.
But if he does, and this is not financial advice, I am not a financial advisor, my goodness, buy land.
Yeah.
Because land will be worth gold in the future. Can you think about that? If half of every acre is owned by the federal government, there's always going to be the good old boys that want their guns, want their God, want their land. And land will absolutely skyrocket. So let's keep going with this article. The report calls for a decade-long effort to support locally led and voluntary, there's that word again, conservation and restoration efforts across public, private, and tribal lands and waters. What's their goal? In order to create jobs and strengthen the economy's foundation. Okay. Tackle the climate and nature crisis.
Oh, wow.
And
There you go.
address inequitable access to the outdoors. So they're land grab to create more jobs, to tackle climate, and to address inequitable access to the outdoors. Now, Philip, I'm sure you know this. Anytime it's equality is similar but not the same as the word equity. And anytime you really see any of the words, any of those words, but especially equity, you know that it's Marxist behind it. You absolutely know that it's Marxist behind it.
Every time.
The definition of inequity is unfair and inequitable distribution. So they're saying that they want to control 30% by 2030, 50% by 2050, because there's an unfair and inequitable distribution of land. It needs to be distributed out.
Yes.
This is absolutely unreal. The report submitted to the National Climate Task Force was developed by the U.S. Departments of the Interior, Agriculture and Commerce, and the White House Council on Environmental Quality. It outlines 8 principles that should guide the nationwide effort, including a pursuit of collaborative approaches, a commitment to supporting the voluntary conservation efforts of farmers, ranchers, and fishers, and honoring the tribal sovereignty and private property rights. Okay. How in the world can the government take 50% of all of our land in this country and not infringe on our private property rights? You see, there's really 2 solutions to this. One, the Constitution would have to be amended, and maybe it will be in the future, but this is a very unlikely scenario in the next 5 to 10 years. That's such a huge process. I believe, and I'm forecasting, that the way they're going to do this is you're going to see a massive push from the liberal left, from the rich and the elite, from Hollywood, to give up your land for the greater good of humanity. That being a landowner is oppressive, and you are a part of that cultural hegemony.
Meanies.
So the next big push, I believe, will be to sacrificially give up your land to the government in the name of climate change, and liberals are going to eat this up. And like I said, we've talked about how cultural Marxism, differentiating between Marxism being Karl Marx to Antonio Gramsci. Antonio Gramsci is the one that kind of repainted Marxism to cultural Marxism, because people just didn't like, how Marxism led to the Gulag, right? So they kind of had to change it up a bit. And he's the one that gave us the cultural hegemony and pitted us, pitted classes against the cultural hegemony. Now, what's the cultural hegemony? It's the group or the people that maintain rule of a country. And Marxism has made the cultural hegemony in America white, male, cisgendered, straight, able-bodied Christians. That is the enemy to Marxists. And if you are not that, you are oppressed. And we have already seen how they want us to give up. And listen, if you're Black, rejoice in being Black. If you're Asian, rejoice in being Asian. If you're anything, rejoice in that. Like, that's great. That's how God made you. But you understand that we cannot say that we are glad that we are white,
Oh,
right?
no,
and
no,
that
no.
and the reason that we even
You're a
feel
racist.
awkward saying
Yeah.
exactly. And the reason that we even feel awkward saying that in this day and age, that yes, I'm proud, I love that I'm white because that's how God made me. That is an effect of critical race theory, absolutely. So what are they doing? They're trying to deconstruct America, diminish it by pitting everybody against one another, and that's why we're called to give up our whiteness, to give up our masculinity, because remember it's white male American, to give up our patriotism, to give up your sexuality, to give up your land. That's the next thing. Land is going to be, you are an oppressor if you own land. So this is what's happening right now. And I'll finish this article real quick and then we can continue. The president's challenge is to call to action to support locally led, once again, conservation and restoration efforts of all kinds all over America, wherever communities wish to safeguard the lands and waters they know and love. It's locally led, but yet at the same time, it's developed by the Department of Interior, Agriculture and Commerce, and White House
How does that
Council
work?
on Environmental Quality.
How does that work?
Yeah. And for those that just like some of the details, these are the 6 areas of focus: creating more parks and safe outdoor opportunities in nature-deprived communities, supporting tribally led conservation and restoration priorities, expanding collaborative conservation of fish and wildlife habitats and corridors, increasing access for outdoor recreation, incentivizing and rewarding the voluntary conservation efforts of fishers, ranchers, farmers, and forest owners, and creating jobs by investing in restoration and resilience projects and initiatives, including the Civilian Climate Corps. So that's basically the first big article of today that just simply shows us one more facet of what is taking place, how the Marxists are trying to diminish America.
Yeah.
And Philip, and interrupt me at any time, it's all a part of the Great Reset. And the Great Reset has had
what's
a lot
amazing,
of
what's amazing me is how they've managed to pervert words that are part of our consciousness. Equality. I'm all for equality, but their equality is not the same equality as I want. They take the word choice,
That's right.
and their choice is not my choice. They can apply their choice to what they want to do, and as soon as I want to choose what I want to do, then I'm a bigot, I'm a homophobe, I'm whatever they can put. The left is brilliant with their labels, and they've taken equality and they've totally twisted and perverted it, that if you're white, then there's something wrong with you. I came to, my background, I don't know if people know this, many folk don't know this, but the Scots and the Irish were slaves as well. We were white slaves. We were part of the Highland clearances by the English, and there was thousands of us sold as slaves in Jamaica. I don't know if you know this or not. And if you killed a black slave or a European, the Scot-Irish slave, the penalty for killing a black slave was more than for killing a white slave, because they were stronger than we were. And that's history. But if you mention it, suddenly everyone goes crazy. Oh, you're a racist. There's not one part of my being that's racist. My only brother is a black man he pastors our church in Scotland. He's a great man of God. And so, but what they do is they twist things so that what you think was the pure meaning of the word was, they've turned it around. We're now talking about transgenderism. And this coming Olympic Games in a few weeks, you're going to have big boys running along with little girls, and they're going to be claiming, hey, and if you dare speak about it, you are the most evil person in the whole world, and you're a bigot, and you're a homophobe, and you're everything else. And unless the church gets some strength and courage from somewhere to say, no, this is what we believe, and this is what we stand for, this tidal wave, they'll come. They'll come for your guns. They'll come for your property, because if you are a property holder, you are an oppressor. Did you notice the other day, Isaac, in South Africa, They've just done in South Africa and are doing in South Africa what they did in Rhodesia or Zimbabwe. They are now taking land back from the owners and is going back to the government. And of course, when they do
Yes.
that, the land becomes
That's
useless
right.
because private enterprise farms land better than the government does. It's unbelievable.
That's right. That's right. And even going to the changing of definition of words, it's deconstructionism. Deconstructionism
That's
is,
a great word.
in layman's terms, it is destroying what a culture and a people deem as truthful, as right, as fact.
Yeah.
It's deconstructing what the population stands on. It's creating sand for them to stand on in which they can easily sink. That's whenever they adopt more of a postmodern
Yeah.
philosophy, which truth is relative. No one really knows exactly what truth is. But yeah, talking about South Africa, the land grab over there, it's absolutely. Why would the left, and we call it left, but it's really here in America, it's Marxist. Why would the Marxists want to take your land? I will let the Cato Institute answer that for us today. The Cato Institute says this: property is the foundation of every right we have, including the right to be free. Every right claim, after all, is a claim to something, either a defensive claim to keep what one is holding or an offensive claim to something someone else is holding. John Locke, the philosophical father of the American Revolution and the inspiration for Thomas Jefferson when he drafted the Declaration of Independence, stated the issue simply: lives, liberties, and estates, which I could call by the general name property. And James Madison, the principal author of the Constitution, echoed those thoughts when he wrote, as a man is said to have a right to his property, he may be equally said to have a property in his rights.
Wow.
America's founding fathers understood clearly that private property is the foundation not only of prosperity, but of freedom itself.
Yeah.
Thus, through the common law, state law, and the Constitution, they protected property rights, the rights of people to acquire, use, and dispose of property freely. So that is why our country was founded upon property and land ownership.
Yeah.
This is another way that they can strip us of being American, diminish America, and out of the ashes, create a totally new order.
I don't know if you realize this. I'm sure you remember Margaret Thatcher. Britain had suffered horrendously under socialism, under a Marxist socialist system for a long time. They nationalized the shipbuilding and they went broke, the rail systems. I mean, they went one thing after the other. In our country at that time, we had the highest government-owned houses in the world, Scotland, percentage-wise. My mother-in-law and father-in-law lived in what they're called council houses. That's how they describe them. I live in a council house. People lived and died in council houses, paid a rent all their lives. The first thing that Margaret Thatcher did when she went to power, she sold the people the house they were living in. So my mother and father-in-law were offered the house that they've been paying rent in for decades for £6,000, $10,000. And my father-in-law said, I'm not paying $10,000 for my house. That's crime. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay for your house. You pay the rent to me instead of to the government, and I'll own your house. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. So eventually I convinced them they bought their council house that they just sold for over £100,000 just a few months ago because both my mother-in-law and father-in-law passed away. But what I'm saying is, Margaret Thatcher knew instinctively if she could get people to own something, if it's the government's windows in my council house, then the government can come and fix them. And if there's a leak in my faucet, well, the government come and fix it. And what she did was, and she turned Britain around from this socialist mentality. She said, I'm going to make it your own house. And she made a whole generation of British people landowners, and they became, so I was painting my door, and I was fixing my windows. And the whole housing situation, excuse me, rose because of that one act. And America is now reversing that, taking away people's rights to property. Nothing good can come out of it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and because under the Great Reset, which is not a conspiracy, it's a real thing. You can,
Yeah.
I mean, it's in bold letters on the World Economic Forum's website. They call this time period that we're in right now the Great Reset, and if you read about it, it really is terrifying, and so many people are so excited and proud about it. But at the end of the Great Reset, and they're not hiding it, is that you will not have rights, you will not have privacy,
Nope.
and you will not have property. And Karl Marx, as we know, was rabidly anti-God. He was an atheist, but he wasn't just an atheist that said, I don't believe in God, and then lived his life. He said he didn't believe in God, but at the same time, he hated God. He hated God, and that's why at the root of Marxism, it's to destroy capitalism and to destroy the church.
Faith.
And
yes.
talking about even going into capitalism, it's Klaus Schwab, who is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. He said that the Great Reset's goal is, in short, we need a great reset of capitalism. And listen, I hope I have a video I sent your team about the World Economic Forum's video that they created in 2016 for 8 goals that they projected for the world by 2030.
We have
I
that.
absolutely believe that.
Can we show that
Great.
just now?
So I'll set it up for you.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No,
We'll show it
no,
right now, and we'll show how it ties into what we've been.
Set it up for us, Zach. Tell us what we're going to be seeing.
Absolutely. So this is 8, and it was published in 2016 on the World Economic Forum's official Facebook page. And I think that whenever President Trump went into office, it kind of screwed this plan up for 4 years. But you'll see how the World Economic Forum's, the Great Reset, is no property, no privacy, but it's really no property. And so now we can see that the World Economic Forum, they're calling on all countries to do their part in this. So that is why I'm saying that the Biden-Harris administration, how they outlined America the Beautiful initiative, 50% by 2050, falls under them backing the World Economic Forum's Great Reset plan. And the main projection that the World Economic Forum gave for 2030, and you're going to see several, the number one is that you will own nothing. And we can go ahead and play that video now if you'd like.
Watch this. Boy, I've seen all of that out working in. Oh my goodness, that's a scary video.
And America is the only country that stands in the way of all of that happening throughout the entire world. You'll own nothing, Philip, and you'll be happy, right? Notice that they had to put the guy smiling. They could have just said, "You'll own nothing." No. But we got to let you. No. We got a guy smiling, and you will be happy, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna rent everything. This is why rent. This is stripping the right of ownership under the guise of sustainable consumption, right? This is the Great Reset's vision of the future. And the U.S. will no longer be the leading superpower. That's like their main focus. And I think it's probably because the United States will have paid enough reparations to all the nations around the world for our oppressive behavior that it's going to leave us broke and powerless. These are signs of the time. Absolutely.
What I think when Donald Trump came in, he really did upset the apple cart, and he caused a tremendous consternation because Obama had been so into this thing. I mean, he was pitching it like crazy. George Bush was a nebulous force, Clinton before him, and America has been pushed. What blows my mind, I'm European, so I've lived in a social country. We have worked for 33 years in Moldova and Romania and Ukraine. So I've watched socialism. We used to laugh. We would go to a restaurant in Romania or Chisinau or in Moldova, and they'd hand you a menu. Here is the menu. So we would pick up the menu, and we would say, "Oh, good, we'll have schnitzel," or we have none. And you go through 6 or 7 items on the menu, and they wouldn't have anything. And at the end, they would say, fillet of pork. We have pork. And there's only one thing, and you went through the charade, going through the menu, knowing that there was nothing on the menu except one thing. And that was socialism. That is what socialism does. They take the choice, but you're happy having whatever it is. We were in Moldova for 20 years, and there was no milk in a store. There was no milk for your tea in a restaurant, because they had they had everything worked out the way it was. When we would drive through Moldova and Romania, as far as fertile countries, you've never seen dark soil like it, rich soil. And at harvest time, you would see crates and crates, Zach, of fruit and vegetables stacked up high, rotting, because they had no mechanism to get the fruit from the field to the marketplace. And you'd have big, huge boxes full of fruit, and it rotting because they couldn't get it from the field to the shop. And at the same time, you'd have a little plot of ground in front of everyone's house, and they would feed themselves from this wee plot of land, because that was capitalism. And that is, believe it or not, America wants to be like them, and they want America to be like them because they don't like America being the only voice of freedom left in the world like we are and as we stand. One of the things,
that's right.
Let me talk about this to you, is one of the things I want to talk to you about as well was the inflation issue that's taking place right now. I see this as a crippling, deadly disease that's about to, you ain't seen nothing yet. You have not seen, when we built our Bible school in Scotland, interest rates were 21% and inflation was 25%. I've lived through those days. And right now, the way they're spending money and they're devaluing the value of the dollar because there's so much dollars printed and so little things available that the end result is prices go up. Tell us the disease and the tragedy and the history of what inflation can do to a nation.
Absolutely. Once again, I'm not a financial advisor. Not financial advice, but I believe that inflation is going to skyrocket in such a way over the next few years that it is just going to be absolutely paramount that you own physical assets, whatever that means, whether it be, anything, whether it be land or homes or guitars or pianos or anything. Precious metals, whatever you can physically own and buy right now, because the rate of inflation, I think, is going to be so great that you
Yes.
will not be able to. The dollar will be devaluing so quickly that it will not depreciate in the same fashion as anything that you can truly buy. And I have two articles. I'm just going to quickly go through this first one because I know that we're starting to run out of time. Listen, this article it says this. This is the worst inflation since the 1970s, and the stage is being set for the total collapse of the U.S. economy. Okay, so last week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics announced that we had a rise of 5.4% over the past 12 months in inflation, 5.4%. And that number shocked a great deal of people. But it's absolutely false and ridiculous because the Bureau of Labor Statistics constantly changes the official rate of inflation by using different indexes. For example, if we were using the exact same index in 1990, it wouldn't be 5.4%, which that number shocked everybody. It'd be 9%.
Wow.
And if inflation was still calculated the same way it was back in 1980, it would not be 5.4% or 9%. It would be well into the double digits.
Wow.
So if we literally were just operating on the exact same calculation, and I've been talking about this for years, that they just pick a couple of things. They pick milk, or they pick this, they pick that, and they pick things that over an extended period of time, that those particular things don't rise in value that greatly, so they can keep the falsified rate of inflation down. So once again, like I said, if we were going by the same statistics in 1980, we'd be well into the double digits for this year alone. Home prices have risen 20% in the last year. The average price of a new car has shot up 12% over the past year. The average new car price hit a record of $38,255, up 12% from the same period a year ago. Listen, how about used cars? Used car prices have increased 10.5% in the last 30 days. In the last 30 days.
Yep.
I have this little account called I have this little app called Credit Karma, and it lets me know like what my credit score is. And I got a notification that my credit score went up a couple of points, and it said that my used car went up almost $1,000 in value. My used car went up $1,000 in value, and I couldn't believe. I'm like, what in the world is going on? And it just works absolutely well with what we're seeing. So I could go on and on about the inflation. Listen, I could not wait. I had to replace my back deck this summer, and I wish I could have waited until next year to do it. I wish I would have had the funds to do it last year. But just talking about the price of lumber is, if you don't believe inflation isn't here, it's unbelievable. But this is where I really want to get into right now for the future. It's Germany's hyperinflation in the 1920s.
Oh yeah.
And how it parallels with where we're at in the USA today. We need to see the parallels to what is happening today and compare it to the past. And once I read this article to you, you're going to want to prepare now. So this is called the German hyperinflation 1923. Just kind of have America in your mind as I read this. Before World War I, Germany was a prosperous country with a gold-backed currency, expanding industry, and world leadership in optics, chemicals, and machinery. The German mark, the British shilling, the French franc, and the Italian lira all had about equal value, and all were exchanged 4 to 5 to the dollar. So just, the audience understands, 5 German marks equaled $1 in around 1914. That was in 1914. In 1923, at the most fevered moment of the German hyperinflation, the exchange rate between the dollar and the mark was no longer 5 to 1. It was 1 trillion marks to $1. And a wheelbarrow full of money would not even buy a newspaper, most Germans were taken by surprise by the financial tornado. That is such a key line. Most Germans were taken by surprise by the financial tornado. Let's go down to on June 24th, 1922, right-wing fanatics assassinated Walter Rathenau, the moderate, able foreign minister. Rathenau was a charismatic figure, and the idea that a popular, wealthy, and glamorous government minister could be shot in a law-abiding society shattered the faith of the Germans, who wanted to believe that things were going to be all right. So you got to understand that a lot of historians on the left and right, sure, World War I, Germany was partially at guilt. Now, World War II, I mean, it was Germany, right? It was Germany. But World War I, sure, Germany was partially at guilt. But historians on both sides of the political aisle, so to speak, a lot of them agree that having Germany pay for almost all of the war reparations was wrong. And that, was decided at the Treaty of Versailles that they would be, fitting the bill, so to speak.
Sure.
Germany would. And they understood that the reason why it wasn't distributed amongst certain countries is because it would have likely caused an economic collapse. So Germany was given really kind of an unjust sentence of having to pay back the large majority of all of the war costs throughout the world. And so what did that lead to? That led to inflation, and it ultimately led to hyperinflation. And so
which ultimately led to Adolf Hitler, because the German people rose up against.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Zach,
and they believed that things were going to be better. Go ahead.
Finish your thought.
So what was happening was that the nervous citizens of the Ruhr, which is a very densely populated area of Germany, currently today it has like 10.5 million people. They were already getting their money out of the currency and into real goods, diamonds, works of art, safe real estate. Now ordinary Germans began to get out of the marks and into real goods. Listen, the article talks about how pianos were bought by families that didn't know how to play the piano. Sellers held back because the mark was worth less every day. As prices went up, the amounts of currency demanded were greater, and the German central bank responded to the demands. Hyperinflation, you see what took place between 1916 and 1918, there was about a 15 to 20% inflation rate. Then from 1918 to 1920, it doubled again. And then by 1923, all hell broke
out
loose.
of control.
And we are tracking on that parallel. Yes.
Exactly.
And
Out
the
of control.
German ruling authorities saw nothing wrong.
We are out of time.
Do you want me to keep going?
We have 1 minute left on the program.
Okay.
Zach, we need to do a week of these shows, because what you're hearing just now, listen, folks, is a trumpet sound, a warning of what is going to happen to America. I'm watching. I also know a lot about the last World War and how it all formed. Inflation did it. And then Hitler came into power and says, I'm going to give you all your money back. We're going to make this a socialist society. Hitler was not a capitalist or a right-wing guy. He was a left-wing guy. And Zach, you need to get in contact with Zach Drew at thezachdrewshow.com/watch. You need to get in contact. He's on show on different networks. But I want you to get in contact with him, because what he talks about is what America needs to hear. And I pray and bless you in the name of Jesus. Thank you for being with us, Zach. God bless.
For over 25 years, the Cameron family has been changing the lives of orphans in Romania and Moldova. From providing running water, flushing toilets, and clean wells, to coal for heat, new windows, as well as food and clothing, they champion the physical needs of the orphans in these broken and desolate countries. Many of Moldova's orphans are saved from the horrors of trafficking through homes founded by the Camerons, and in the process, orphans become daughters and sons. They come to know their Heavenly Father and are forever changed by the love of Jesus. God help the Camerons lift these amazing young men and women out of darkness. Now, no longer orphans, they want to return and invade that very same darkness with the light of Jesus Christ. The Orphans' Hands equips these daughters and sons to become missionaries. Your monthly gift of $31 will allow us to rescue and take in more girls and boys, saving them from the hell of human trafficking. Your monthly partnership will allow us to care for those in the Orphans' Hands homes in Moldova and the Ukraine. If you want to join Philip and Chrissy in taking care of these precious young people, please contact us today by calling 833-DAILY-FAITH. You can also give by going online to www.dailyfaith.tv or by writing to Post Office Box 25, Clinton, Tennessee 37716. So many lives depend on what we do. Thank you for loving the lost. If you are a pastor, church leader, or business owner and would like to have Philip Cameron come and speak to your church, conference, or event, please call 1-833-DAILY-FAITH or go to pastors.philipdcameron.com or request by mail at attention Andrew Cameron, Post Office Box 25, Clinton, Tennessee 37716.